To the true Celt, the Tartan is the symbol of an ancient and revered state of society, in which the head of a clan is to be known and loved as a kind and considerate father by every dependent. It revives the devoted loyalty of clansmen to their chief, it recalls the memories of their devotion to an exiled royal race, now under the laws of Tanistry represented by the reigning royal family. It opens the floodgates of Scottish patriotism, and makes the wearer proud to think he yet may breathe the free air in the land of the mountain and the flood. There is reason to believe that the Highland dress is of extreme antiquity. Sculptured resemblances of it are to be found on ancient stones in various parts of the country. The dress in its oldest form was kilt and plaid in one. The favourite custom of marking the cloth with stripes and spots, and thus producing what, in the language of the Gael, was called bracken, may have been practised in very early times. According to modern authorities, the Scottish Highlands and Islands were divided into great tribal districts, each ruled by a great chief, denominated more heir, later earl, or king, and, excepting the lords of the Isles and princes of Galloway, these provincial kings owned allegiance to their high king, the Ard Righ Alban, who became, in due course, the King of Scots. The whole system of government and social organization was a tribal and hereditary pyramid, for each of the old earls was believed to be cousin to the Ard Righ. Each chief and chieftain held his country lodully, under God. It was termed a duchess, and the usual claim was that his progenitor was the first to have raised smoke and boiled water on that land. Subsequently the feudal system, scientifically defined as the organization of the family, was adopted to give permanence to the Scottish tribe system, and thenceforth the clan system developed, and to each ascending rank of chieftains and chiefs the others gave unquestioning allegiance. Every member of the same clan, or subdivision of a clan respectively, had a common surname, and united homage and unswerving service in peace or war were freely given to the chief, who was the protecting head of all, and in his turn owed homage either to an earl or directly to the king, the father of all the fathers and supreme chief. A clan was thus a family, for it has been recently laid down in heraldic law that clan and family mean exactly the same thing. The organization is one of cousinship, not fraternity, and the clan, like the families within it, is continually expanding into branches, each further recruited by those, called septs or dependents, who, though of the humblest rank, claim equal ancestry with the chief. Thus welded together, this warlike race attained a pitch of passionate patriotism which has never been surpassed. Ever ready and united to repel the invader, the clans preserved their individuality in times of security. Wearing the Highland dress in common, they were distinguished by the markings on the cloth from which it was woven. They had their distinctive badges, some native plant or flower, in their headgear, while their respective war cries were chosen from the name of some notable feature of nature in the landscape in which they dwelt. They were proud, fierce and fearless, and stepped exultingly to the field of death, following the heraldic banner of their chief or chieftain, which also fluttered from the bagpipes. Whatever be the date of the introduction of the Highland dress, early enough mention is made of it under the foreign but forceful name of tartan to entitle it to veneration. James High of Scotland had his gown of cloth of gold lined with aneln and anhave of blue tartan. In the same entry in the Treasurer's Book for 1471 we are told that half aneln of doublet tartan was used to lin ride in collars to her lady the Queen, while, in accordance with the traditional custom of the Ard Righ, as well as out of love for its picturesque charm, James V wore the tartan when in 1538 he went a-hunting in the Highlands. Later there are allusions to the tartan in several Acts of Parliament. In 1662 a special tribute was paid to it by royalty. At his marriage in that year, Charles II adorned himself with tartan ribbons of royal Stuart pattern. The earliest list of clans in the Highlands and Isles is given in an Act of Parliament of the year 1587. Until the dramatic and disastrous outburst of 1745 hardly any change was made in the clan system, but after that fruitless endeavour to restore bonny Prince Charlie to the throne of his fathers, the old ties of clan kinship were cruelly attenuated by the rigidly repressive Acts of 1746 and 1748. By the former act the clansmen were forbidden to wear the tartan or carry arms. For the first transgression of this enactment, the offender was imprisoned, for the second he was banished. In 1748 a determined attempt was made to destroy the feudal power of the Highland chiefs by an act to abolish heritable jurisdiction. Fortunately the principle was not completely abolished, and the chiefs and barons, capitani tribuum, still retain at least honorary powers, and their status in the heraldic law of Scotland survives. However, until 1782, except by stealth, the tartan was unseen upon the hills and in the glens, where it had been a people's pride. In the year mentioned, the Duke of Montrose fought nobly for the repeal of the hated Disarming Act, and was successful. The tartan could again be worn. Many of the chiefs were restored to the peerage, and the chiefly titles continued to be recorded in the Lion Register of Arms, where the genealogies of chiefs and chieftains are recorded by Acts of Parliament. During the melancholy period when the tartan was banned by government, the oppressed Highlanders duly and silently endured their wrongs. They brooded upon the loss of their ancient heritage, but were powerless to reclaim their privileges. The wings of their martial ardour had been completely clipped at Culloden, and, in the words of the ballad, the clans were all away, away. This, in a very literal sense, was soon to be. Their pride humbled, their hopes blasted, strangers almost in the land of their birth, the kindly rule of the chiefs replaced by the haughty and intolerable domination of Hanoverian officers, the men of the bens and glens at last tore themselves from their ancestral soil, and sailed with their wives and families across the wide Atlantic. Between 1763 and 1775 not less than 20,000 Highlanders found a refuge in America. Canada received many of them, and a new Celtic race sprang up to nourish their children on the traditions which the Pilgrims had brought with them overseas. The scattering of the clans, though partly the outcome of the Disarming Act, was also due to the altered economic conditions fostered by the Hanoverian government, which put pressure on the chiefs, ruined by devotion to the Stuart kings, and had confiscated many of their estates. Young chiefs were lured to the south, educated in English ideas, and, under pressure of urges to be progressive, were often induced, or forced, to turn over their lands to sheep-run speculators, whilst shipping contractors staged a concurrent emigration ramp, out of which, to the consternation of the older chiefs, these agents made fortunes by depopulating the Highlands. The bright aspect of this sorry chapter was, however, that many Highlanders settled, often in groups, sometimes emigrating, like Glengarry's men, under their chief himself, with banner flying, in many parts of the empire, where the Highland heart beats so strong today. The flood of emigration again began to flow freely westward in the opening years of the 19th century. But though exiled, the children of the mist had still a consuming love for the homeland they had left behind them. They delighted and inspired their children with stories of the clans in the days of their greatness. They set the young hearts yearning for the heather hills, the rushing torrents, and the wind in the pines. But above everything beautiful and grand in nature, the glamour of the tartan had taken an immovable grip upon the imagination of the Celt. The love for the old dress was in his blood, and this love grew stronger and deeper with years of exile. With the tartan, moreover, go the gracious manner, stately demeanour, and courtly graces, which have ever distinguished the Highlander, and mark a social organization based on the family, where the ceremony of the heather-thatched cottage was formed on what was learnt in the chieftain's castle, and that, in turn, on what had come down through ages in the court of the Ardry at Scone and Holyrood House. When the pioneers had gone to their long rest, their sons and daughters still cast a longing look toward the old clan country from which they drew their origin. Instead of being the forbidden garb of the outlaw, the Highland dress won renewed favor in the new home, and at every reunion of the scattered race it was the special token of long and honorable descent from heroic ancestors. Clan societies grew up and multiplied in the New World and in colonial Britain. Wherever Scotsmen dwelt, the sympathetic feeling of kinship revived, and the tartan became symbolic not of the Highlands alone but of Scotland as a whole. This had indeed been recognised about the time of the Union of Parliaments in 1707, and in the early 18th century the tartan was worn in the city of Edinburgh, the first regiment to wear the tartan being the Royal Company of Archers. Ardent Scotsmen began to inquire if they also were not historically entitled to wear the tartan of a clan from which, perchance, they were descended. Historically, many were disappointed, at least in finding that they belonged to none of the great clans or names, even of the borders, by whom special tartans were worn. Clansmen they were not, but what they could not wear as a birthright they wore out of admiration for the dress which typified the heroic qualities of the Scottish land. The district Tartans and such old sects as the Jacobite Tartan, connoting a love for the patriarchal blood bond symbolized by the royal house, served the purpose of these. Among the clansmen themselves there was confusion as to the accurate choice of the tartan which would show the clan to which they lineally belonged. Confusion had followed the terrible time of the rebellion. The ingenious methods of inweaving the patterns had been in some instances entirely lost. Minor families had lost their identity, and the riddle of the correct tartan for clan, for sept, and for dependent was not an easy one to solve. But fortunately the tangled skein of Celtic genealogy was unravelled by degrees. By patient, painstaking industry Celtic scholars and antiquaries at last produced a tolerably accurate account of every clansman's lineage. From the chaos of the past the tartan has been restored to its rightful place of honour, and the interest which it evokes is both national and worldwide. Many are the Scottish men and women who still wear it for love of the long-gone days. It is a gladdening glimpse of the clan glory that never parts from an historic race, and which, so long as its children preserve the proud traditions of their clan, is a constant source of inspiration, to decor the house from which they come, to live as a credit to the ancient heroes, and to be ever ready to assist the kinsmen of their clan. Clad in kilt and plaid, in bonnet and feather, the Scottish soldier acquitted himself with magnificent daring on many a stubborn field of battle. Well might the gallant Sir Colin Campbell cry at Lucknow, "Bring on the tartan, it is the imperishable badge of bravery, it is the dress that has won a deathless renown." The early 19th century saw the commencement of clanship's revival from the blow of 1746, and, under the example of the Queen Empress Victoria, the chiefs were again encouraged to resume their tribal functions, and to make their hoary towers once home, to clansmen at home and from overseas, the hearth of the race, to which, in thought and in fact, the scattered children of the race can never turn. Under the swelling folds of the chiefly banner clansmen in kilt and trews, and the daughters of the clan in plaid and arised, still gather around their chief and bantigurner as the parents of the race. The historic titles of the Scots peerage perpetuate the tribal provinces of the Celtic kings, being honours shared by the whole race and surname of each, and thus give a striking clan significance to these Scottish honours. In the governance of Britain, the king still represents the Ard Righ, head of the kindred, viz. the High Chief, and his Lord Lion King of Arms of Scotland represents the High Senachie, so that the ascending bond of kinship, symbolised by the tartan, is still an actual and legalised feature of the realm of Scotland, linking those of Scottish blood, the world over, both with one another and with the arts, the poetry and the romance of Celtic Scotland. From the book, The Scottish Tartans, by W. and A. K. Johnston Limited.